This afternoon we are going to do a little demo on how to install relatively new Trex Hideaway hidden fastening system screws and plugs. So if you've installed Trex decking before, quick show of hands, anybody installed Trex decking before? Yeah? Okay, so up until this year, up until 2024, when it came to installing Trex decking with face screws and plugs, we relied on third parties to supply those screws and those plugs. So whether it was Starborn, Fasten Master, other folks in the industry, we relied and specified using their products to install our decking. But this year, we launched our own line of screws and plugs under our Hideaway hidden fastening system brand. So today we're going to talk about how to install 3 different types of screws. We're going to talk about how to install color matched composite deck screws. So that's your standard face fastener that's going to be color matched to the decking. And you'll install that with a hex stick drive bit. So that's a T20 star drive bit that is specifically engineered and designed to give you a magnetic-like fit in the head of that screw. So you get a nice wobble-free drive with that drive bit, okay? We're also going to talk about how to install composite plug screws. So that's a very similar screw to our color match composite deck screw. The difference is you'll notice it's black because it's going to be hidden by a plug. Okay, and so we'll talk about how to install these plugs as well. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is how to install plug screws for our enhanced decking. So if you're familiar with our decking product lines, enhanced decking is our scalloped bottom deck board. And so there's a couple things you have to be attentive to when you're installing screws with plugs into this scalloped profile, right? So we've designed our system in a way to make sure that you can hit any part of the scallop profile and still have a nice secure connection. And so we'll talk through those details here. First, we're going to start with a composite color match deck screw, sort of your most basic type of screw. What I want to let you guys know is when we launched these screws, we didn't just go out there, find an existing screw that was on the market, slap our name on it. We partnered with Phillips Screw Company, so the original inventor of the Phillips drive that we're all familiar with. We partnered with them to engineer and design a system that we feel is sort of a better mousetrap, if you will, when we look at the fastening market. So the hex stick drive bit is going to install right into our impact. You can use either an impact or a standard drill driver to drive these color match screws. And after we've done this demo, I've got this set up so it's got flat blocking, so we can install a screw anywhere on these deck boards, and you guys are more than welcome to come up and install screws yourself. The color match deck screw, you'll notice if you haven't installed composite screws before, I'm going to stop halfway through, it goes slow at first. As it's going slow at first, it's removing that material, right? And then it speeds up. And you've ejected all that material from the composite core of the deck board so that the screw does not mushroom. So we refer to mushrooming as when you get a little bit of a raised area or a raised surface around the head of the screw. So the reason why these screws are designed the way they are with the specific type of threads that they have is to minimize mushrooming in that case, okay? So we have an industry-leading mushrooming spec so that if you were to run your finger over that screw, you're not going to feel a lump or a hump where that screw is installed. Color-matched composite deck screws can be installed in either solid core or scalloped core decking, okay? So regardless of whether it's a solid profile like we have here or a scallop profile like we have here, you can use the same type of screw in either board. Obviously, you would just pick the color that matches whatever deck board you're installing. So I'll install one more without stopping this time, and I'll install it in our scalloped decking this time. just like that. So that is our color matched composite deck screws. Next, we're going to talk about our composite plug screws. So again, as I mentioned, this is a black screw. It is ever so slightly different than the color matched composite deck screw. So if you're using plugs, you want to make sure that you use the black plug screw that's intended for use with those plugs. That screw is going to be installed with a depth setter. So if you're familiar with competitors out there of ours like Fastener and Starborn, who we previously relied on to install our decking, they have similar types of depth setters. What I'll point out as a difference in our design is, if you look at the end of that depth setter, this is an EPDM rubber tip. Okay, so some designs out there might use a felt tip, for example. The problem with a felt tip is that it's going to wear out as you use this over and over again. In some cases, when it wears out, the installer may choose to take it off. If you take it off, or if it's worn out, you're now guessing on the depth of that screw. And you need to set the depth of that screw head perfectly so that your plug fits in nice and seamlessly, right? So the beauty of this EPDM rubber is it's going to squish out. That's a very technical term. It's going to squish out and set the head of that screw at the exact right depth every single time. The other nice feature of that material, that EPDM rubber, is going to outlast the drive tip itself on the bit. So the drive tip of the bit will wear out before this EPDM rubber ever wears out. So that means you're always going to get the right depth every single time. Again, this can also be used with an impact driver. When I install this screw, you won't be able to see it probably or feel it, but again, I would welcome you to come back up later and try it yourself. If you do try it yourself, you'll feel that rubber squishing out, okay? But you're also going to hear the drive cam out, and that's when you know you've set the screw to the right depth and you can stop driving. I want to point out, this is a composite deck screw for solid core or solid profile decking only. So we'll talk through how to install plug screws on our scalloped bottom decking next. I want to make sure you guys notice we're installing this into a solid profile board right now. So you hear it cammed out. That's when you know you can stop driving. At that point, this is set the exact right depth. I'm going to come back with my plug here. I'm going to pick whatever plug lines up with the best color and grain pattern match for where I am in the board. Note today I'm not using plugs or screws that exactly match the decking. And then you can use a hammer just to tap that plug off of the strip. Then give it another tap just to make sure it's a nice smooth finish. And again, the same mushrooming performance on that plug screw as you have on your color match screw. So if you run your finger over it with the plug, you're not going to feel any raised bump in that area. So I'll go ahead and drive one more here. Pick my plug and tap it in with a hammer just like that. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the plugs themselves. If you look at Starborn, Fastenmaster, other companies that are out there that make plugs for installing Trex decking, they actually take our decking, they buy it from the channel, and they manufacture the plugs from our deck boards. What we've done to make a more efficient process is we actually take the shell stock that we use to extrude our decking, and we've injection molded plugs from that shell stock. So what you get is the best color match you're going to get for Trex decking. Think about it as this. It's by Trex for Trex, right? These are screws made by Trex for use with Trex. So when you go into Kuiken, when you go into a lumber yard to buy your Trex decking, the natural choice as far as what fasteners to buy are going to be the Trex fasteners, because you're going to get the best color match, and there's going to be a color match, whether it's screw or plug, for every color and product that we have. Next, we're going to talk about how to install plug screws into scallop decking. Okay, so if you guys have installed plug screws into scallop decking before, what you'll be familiar with is, because of the scallop bottom nature of this deck board, with other systems that are on the market, you have to make sure you hit the thick part of the profile when you drive that screw. If you hit the thin part, and again, you're setting that screw into a certain depth so that you can put a plug, you end up with very little material between the underside of the head of that screw and this thin part of the board here. So companies like Fasten Master might require you to use a template. A template is going to make sure that that screw aligns right in the center of the thick part of this profile. What Trex's stance on that had been was, we didn't believe that folks could use or would choose to use that template every single time, right? And more important than that, we didn't have control over whether someone chose to use that template. And if you don't use the template, if you start to eyeball it and you hit this thin part, then you're going to have a screw that's not really holding that deck board as securely as it needs to. It's not going to pass our uplift requirement. So what we've done is we've chosen to use a fascia style fastener. A fascia style fastener that now, when you counterbore to set the depth of this screw, that screw can be installed anywhere across the profile of the deck board. Because the fascia style fastener has a trimmer, a thinner head, when you compare it to a standard plug screw, that allows you now, with that screw, to hit anywhere on this board and have a secure connection that's going to pass uplift. What that means, though, is to install that screw, instead of just using a depth setter, you also have to use a counterbore tool first to counterbore a hole for that screw, just like you would if you were installing a similar type of screw on fascia. So that counterbore tool is designed in a unique way so that as you see this cone or funnel with this piece in the middle, the teal piece in the middle, you'll notice as I go to counterbore, you're going to see that teal piece spin and eject material out from this cone. The reason it's designed like that is if we don't allow that material to eject, it will get trapped in that cone, it will spin on the decking, and it could actually mar the decking surface. So by allowing the material to eject, you prevent that marring from happening. You'll also see, if you come up close later, there's an EPDM rubber O-ring around the perimeter of this so that when it hits your top of your deck board, it doesn't mar or scratch it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and drive here just like that. And again, you'll notice I can go anywhere across the width of this. I don't have to make sure I'm in a certain spot because of the design of this fastening system. You'll see as I did that material ejected. So I'll go ahead and do it again here. And it's throwing that material out so that it's not getting trapped and marring your decking. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my my depth setter, and note that our depth setters are labeled based on their application. So the depth setter that I'd previously used that I just removed is labeled decking. This depth setter is intended for use with solid profile decking. The depth setter I'm going to use paired with my counterbore tool is labeled enhance. Okay? You want to make sure you are using the enhanced depth setter when you are driving a screw into enhanced decking. So we're going to take our fascia style screw into the hole that we previously counterbored, and just like we drove the screws here, we're going to go ahead and drive just like that. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing in this hole. Now we're going to come back with our plug, and you'll notice these plugs are wider, right? They're wider because the head of this screw is wider. So I want to make sure I'm using the right type of plug. Pick any plug here, just like I have here. Hammer it off and hit it just like that. There'll be a little burr maybe that you can wipe off with your finger. And I'll go ahead and do another one right here. Again, no mushrooming, a nice smooth finish as you rub your finger across it. What I want to point out about the tools, right? So the tools, when you have to counterbore, are not included with the screws. When we talk about depth setters for solid profile decking, when we talk about hex sticks drive bits for color match screws, those tools, those bits are included with the screws. When you have to counterbore, those tools are sold separately because these tools will outlast a given package of screws. So if you buy your counterbore toolkit, you're going to get one counterbore tool and 2 depth setters in that pack, okay? If you look at the packaging when you're buying our screws, you'll notice everything is labeled with steps. So here we see step 1, 2, and 3. Step 1 is obviously to buy your screws. Step 2 is to buy this kit. So we have step 2 highlighted green so you know what step you're on when you're buying this. And then step 3 would be to buy your plugs. Your plugs are sold separately. So if we were to look at a package of plugs, we'll see the same steps, 1, 2, 3, but now step 3 is highlighted because plugs are the third purchasing step when we're talking about counterboring. I want to talk next about the butt joint clip. So if you're familiar with Trex hidden fasteners, our universal plastic hidden fastener for installing our grooved decking, earlier this year we launched what's called the butt joint clip. Okay, so some people might say the best way to install a butt joint is to avoid them altogether. If you go out to our decking display at the Trex booth, you'll notice we have breaker boards, right? We've chosen not to install butt joints, but instead to install breaker boards. That would be what I might call sort of the professional way to avoid butt joints by installing that breaker board. But let's say you're someone like me who prefers the aesthetic of a butt joint. You think that nice staggered butt joints actually gives a nice design feature to the deck. Or let's say you're more of a DIYer who doesn't necessarily have the skill or the proficiency to frame properly for a breaker board. The butt joint clip's going to come in handy by making it nice and easy to install that butt joint. So when we refer to a butt joint, we mean where 2 boards meet end to end, okay? And so typically, when you install a butt joint, 2 boards meeting end to end, the big no-no, right, this is definitely what you should not do, I want to make that very clear, is to install that butt joint with a single fastener on either side, sharing one joist. So this is a big no-no. You never want 2 boards to share one fastener with one joist, because essentially by doing that, each board is held down by only half of a clip. So that's not going to meet our uplift requirements. To make matters worse, if you happen to not gap the deck boards like you're supposed to, let's say for instance that you installed a butt joint like that with no gapping, when those boards expand, they're going to want to grow. When they grow, they're going to have nowhere to go but up. So they're going to lift up. If you only have one fastener in place on both of those boards, that connection will likely fail. And best case scenario is you have a tripping hazard, if not worse, right? So the right way to do it with 2 hidden fasteners would be to install a sister joist or a nailer board, so just an extra piece of blocking next to my joist. And I don't have one here, but I would have one fastener there holding this board down, and then I would have another fastener on top of my sister joist that you can imagine is there holding this deck board down. So now at least both boards are held down by their own fastener. What's nice about the butt joint clip is it allows you to use a single clip, and it allows you to avoid having to install that sister joist or that nailer board. So it's going to save you time and materials on the installation of the butt joint. The way it works, here's the clip. I'll refer to these as the shelf created by the legs of the clip. This shelf, the width of that shelf, is the same width as two 2x framing members sandwiched together. So if you had a sister joist or a nailer board, that would be two 2x framing members. That's going to give you the same width as you have here, so that the effective surface area that those boards are resting on is the same when you're using one clip with a single joist. Then you can see the tab on the fastener is essentially, if not slightly longer than 2 times the width of a standard hidden fastener. So you can use one clip, but you're getting the effective hold down power of 2 clips. So you would set your fastener on your 2x joist. Still, you would want to, I gotta move down actually, my board's too long here. Set my fastener on my joist. Still want to make sure you properly gap your deck board. So if you look in our installation guide, there's specific gapping requirements depending on whether it's above or below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And then your screws are going to install at about a 45-degree angle, just like you see here. Okay, and then your next board is going to sit right in here. If you have your butt joint staggered, you would just have another board that comes right in here. Okay, the only caveat I want to note, we've got our friends from Trex Rain Escapes here today. If you guys are familiar with Rain Escapes underdeck drainage system, you cannot use the butt joint clip with Trex Rain Escapes due to the way that those screws would penetrate that barrier. You don't want to use the butt joint clip with Rain Escapes. Other than that, it's going to work with standard 2x wood framing. All right. If you guys have used our 500 square foot bucket of hidden fasteners, so our big contractor pack of fasteners, earlier this year when we launched the butt joint clip, we started including one of these packs in every bucket. So if you've used those buckets, you would have seen this by now, hopefully. It's a little promo pack. Think about it like your Cracker Jack prize box from Trex. 2 butt joint clips, 4 screws that are loosely bagged in there, a little promo card that shows you how it's installed, and also a 1-page installation instruction inside of that bag. This won't be in that bucket forever, but we wanted to put it in there initially to drive awareness of what the butt joint clip was. These are also available by purchase in 14-count tubs, so that would be enough clips to install up to 7 butt joints, if not more, if your butt joints are aligned one next to the other. And one thing I want to note, our supplier for the butt joint clip is the same company that manufactures our plastic universal hidden fastener. They're based in Winchester, Virginia, just like Trex is. They are working on automation equipment to preset the screws in the butt joint clip. So you all hopefully know that the screws in our universal hidden fastener come preset. Currently, the butt joint clip screws come loosely bagged with the butt joint. Going forward, once we have that automation equipment online, those screws will be preset in the butt joint clip, just like they are in the universal hidden fastener. All right? That's all I have for you guys today on fastening, but feel free to come up, ask questions. Also, certainly feel free to put a drill in your hand. There's nothing I dislike more as a marketing guy to show contractors how to use a drill, because you guys can do it much better than me. So please feel free to come up here and give it a try.